We're very privileged today to be visited virtually by Shoryu Bradley. He's the abbot and founder of Butsuji Monastery in the Ozark Mountains in Arkansas. He was ordained at Austin Zen Center, and then he went to study with Shohaku Okamura, a name that you've all probably seen on our bookshelves from time to time, and received Dharma transmission from Okamura. Welcome very much. It's going to speak on one of the gnarliest of precepts today.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Alaska Zen Center, to be to connect with you in this way. I've never been to your center. I would love to do that sometime. Maybe one of these days we can connect in person. But now I'm grateful for the realm that allows so many people to come together from different parts of the country, and very happy to be here. I'll tell you a little bit more about our practice in Northwest Arkansas at Butsuji. So we just had our 10-year anniversary. Very grateful to have been 10 years at the temple full time. It's a fantastic place. Really focus on doing a sesshin every month in the style of Uta Hiroshi, who is my teacher's teacher. And we do a kind of specific kind of practice around that sesshin. And if you're ever going to be in our neck of the woods, the Ozark Mountains of Northwest Arkansas, so be happy to see you there. But today, so I'll go ahead and get started today. I was going to speak about the precept of not killing. So it is a gnarly precept, as are all of them in a certain way, confusing to us when we start delving deeply into these precepts and what they mean for us. I've been studying precepts for maybe a couple of years, a bit more deeply now, just giving talks on them and going into them in more depth as I sort of, prepare other people to take precepts as my practice. And so here we are at the precept of not killing. I would say before starting on this one specifically that we can really see that each of these precepts embodies the other precepts if we start going deeply in, of course, Dogen Zenji tradition, which most of us here, I think, practicing.
Can you speak a little louder, please?
Sure. Yeah. I wonder if there's a way to turn up my sound here. Let's see.
Without video. So if he kills his video, you're probably going to hear a lot better.
So you think it may be your connection? There's a little bit of a breakup. You thinking?
It's breaking up.
Okay. Yeah, a lot of the bandwidth kills it.
Yeah, I hate to say this, but we may have to turn your video off in order to hear you adequately, which is,
yeah. Okay.
Is there no other option?
Sure. The other thing, try something else here too. We have a better mic that we might be able to try and see if that works. I apologize.
That's a little better.
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah, you got closer. That was better.
Is this better now?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go ahead and hook this up.
Okay, is this better?
Yes.
Yay. All right. Okay, awesome. I'd like to thank my technical team over here, Lacey. on top of things. We have only the best. So, so basically, I was just saying that these precepts, of course, are very deep and profound, and they're actually the way that we allow our zazen practice, our practice of just receiving, just being present, just and not grasping. We come into all of our life off of the cushion. So for me, it's a kind of way, it's something to return to, all of these precepts. And as I was saying earlier, each of them, if we study them deeply, encompass all of the other precepts. And so when we get into each one, we find our sort of universal bodhisattva vow. So we're looking at our zazen practice and our vow and this reality of all beings from a sort of different perspective, with these precepts. So this reality is impossible to speak about, but we speak about it anyway in order to do work in the world as bodhisattvas. So these are ways to sort of speak about our zazen practice and our practice off of the cushion from different perspectives, in my view. So this non-killing, this precept of not killing is a koan for us, really. We start to look at it. In our tradition, we have 16 bodhisattva precepts in Dogen Zenji's tradition. And so, of course, we take the refuges, and then we have the 3 pure precepts and these 10 major precepts. And not killing, of course, is the first of these major precepts. So in the Kyoju Kaiman, Dogen Zenji's comments on the precepts, he's not killing. By not killing life, the seeds of are nurtured, and one is enabled to succeed in the Buddha's life of wisdom. Do not kill life. So Dogen Zenji got these precepts from the Bamkyo, or the Brahmana Sutra, the Mahayana Precept Sutra. And in that sutra, it really goes into a lot of detail and says any kind of killing is prohibited. We don't want to be killing animals, any form of life, of course, other human beings, but not even to be involved in the karma of killing or any way connected with killing. And it says, it says if we do that, we commit a bodhisattva parajika offense. So that means, I think, we're no longer a bodhisattva, if we break this precept. And that's kind of the most serious thing, we can do, because we take a vow, to be a bodhisattva. But of course, the good news is that we can return to our vow. We make mistakes and we can return. Ucham Roshi called that vow and repentance. So we vow not to kill, or we vow to practice deeply with all beings and not see them as objects of our desire. Then, we see that we do that. Of course, we make mistakes, and we simply return to our vow of seeing all beings as contents of the self, rather than objects in which we, try to fulfill our own desire. So that's the good news, of course, is that we can return to our vow. So these precepts are sort of like our posture in Zazen, I think. When we get sleepy, or when we start nodding off, or thinking, or going away from this present moment, getting caught up in thoughts, we just return here and now. That is our repentance. That's what Ucham Roshi called vow and repentance. So the sort of problem here, as I said, is this subject-object relationship that the Buddha taught about. He said that when when we encounter some object with the sense organ, there's some kind of contact and consciousness that arises. And within that contact, there is greed, hatred, and delusion. So greed, hatred, and delusion is of course, the cause of our suffering and the suffering of others. And so I think that this precept is really, of course, all the precepts are talking about this subject-object relationship and how we practice with it and go beyond it. But when we really look at not killing, it's really impossible to keep that precept in a literal sense. So, first of all, from my perspective, for example, I have this temple out in the woods, and for years, I let the wasps go. We were coexisting fine. The wasps were making their nests, and I never really saw a problem. But over the years, they started building more and more nests every year. And one year, I got stung 7 times because they get aggressive in the late summer when they have their offspring and they're protecting their offspring. And somewhere I heard that actually they eat rotting fruit at this time of year too, that fall off the wild plums and berries and stuff. And the fruit is fermenting and they get drunk and they sort of get more aggressive. So I guess they're a mean drunk. They don't like they don't do well with the drinking or with the fermented fruit. But so this one year, someone was coming who is allergic to bee and wasp stings. And so I started breaking this precept of not killing and knocking down their nests. And so if I had not broken the precept, I wonder this person who came might have had some serious reaction. And there's even a serious allergy. There's a risk of death even in another human being. I can talk of many examples like this. One year, our beautiful, lovely dogwood tree next to the porch that blooms so beautifully every year was stressed. It was like, I think the first or second year I was at the temple. And I didn't really know the nature of drought and the effect it had on the trees, but it was dying because of lack of water. So we have a small pond near the temple, and I was going to, bring it water in a wheelbarrow, a container. And I was, one of these beloved trees. I picked the one that, of course, this person thought was most important. But as I was putting the water on it, after a few times, I saw that there were beings in the water that were being killed, like, water beings, like water beetles or eels, little eels, or other kinds of, you can imagine pond water is filled with all kinds of beings. We have to really stay on top of the mice at Gyobutsuji, and I do live trap them. I put them they get into a live trap and I take them out, and we relocate them every once in a while. I know that they come back. They find their way back, so I have to make sure I take them far away. But one time I did see that there was a mouse that had a particular, really unusual marking on it, and it came back. So they have a strong urge to come back. And I think that probably is because that might have been, a mother or a father mouse. So I think I'm being compassionate and taking them away, but probably they have a nest of babies somewhere that's killed because I took them away. But if I don't take them away, they literally, destroy everything. They really, the rats, for example, chewed wires in our truck, and the 4-wheel drive was destroyed one time, and I couldn't get out of the monastery during the wintertime because the 4-wheel drive was gone. So it can be really dangerous to not take care of things in this way. So I think, one other example, my neighbor came onto the property one time some years ago. I have a good relationship, a pretty good relationship with my neighbor, but they are sort of different than I am. They are hunters, and they grew up in rural Arkansas, and they have a different cultural background. So he's a deer hunter. And one day he came onto my property, and he said, "Can I go looking through your property, because I shot a deer with an arrow, and I want to find it." So some of the people with me were saying, "Well, you can't, be part of this. You can't, let him go onto your property." But, in my mind, I thought, well, letting this deer just die out in the woods by itself and then be, not consumed or not, was kind of also a tragic thing. So I let him go ahead and, try to find the deer. And was I somehow an accomplice in that killing of that deer? But I figured he would probably find the deer and put it, kill it more quickly rather than it suffering for hours or days. And then he used the meat. I know that he used the meat for that deer. So anyway, probably all of us can think of these kinds of examples where this precept is not so easy. None of them are meant to be sort of literal things that we say this is right and this is wrong. We simply can't do it. And it's describing the sort of nature of our life. They're kind of koans for us. If we really look at this more deeply too, we see that this precept from Boman Kyo that says no killing whatsoever, don't be involved in any killing, is really impossible, because life and death completely are interpenetrated. Even if we're vegetarians, we're eating vegetables, which are a form of life. And also, of course, all of the beings that go into farming, the beings that are killed as a result of farming. We know that that's the case, of course, that we really can't farm without sentient beings being killed. So it's a kind of a koan. So if we really keep this precept and we stop killing or being involved in the karma of killing, we have to die ourselves, because then we kill ourselves, because life and death are intimately, interpenetrating. We don't know really where one begins and the other ends. So I think one of the points is, of course, is that this subject-object relationship is very important in the way that we need to clarify what our life is and what our practice is. And is this killing some kind of extension of our desire or greed or hatred? Or is it, can we somehow need to practice with this koan as if all beings are expressing the same life, this shared life that we all share with all beings. So so today I wanted to just not focus so much on this issue of literal killing in the way that we often think about it, but talk about this on a little bit different level or different perspective. On a conventional level, we know that killing for its own sake is deeply unwholesome, but there are also other ways that I think we're involved in this karma of killing. So there are a set of precepts that are attributed to Bodhidharma. They're called Bodhidharma's, one mind precepts. And that precept concerning killing says, self-nature is wondrous and imperceptible. Within the everlasting Dharma, Not arousing the view of extinction is called the precept of not killing. So Bodhidharma says that arising, allowing the idea that we can actually kill is a breach of this precept. And so if we don't understand this very carefully, we make a big mistake, of course. We really have to be careful. But from this one mind perspective, of course, this one mind is all beings, the reality of Indra's net, this vast net that extends across the universe, as most of us know this metaphor. And at each juncture of the net is an individual being. And yet the net is just or the knot in the net is just a condition of the net. It's a knot, we can untie it or retie it. So another metaphor says there's a jewel at each juncture of this net, and the entirety of all of the net is reflected in each jewel, and all of the individual beings, of course, are also reflected in this jewel. So that means, of course, this entire universe, beyond the reality of individual beings and unity, beyond our concepts of individuality and universal being. So in some way, there's no coming and going. We cannot say that when beings die, they go somewhere, because there's no way to exit this reality. And it's always so, although we think it is. We grasp this view of individual beings as real as me and you, and yet we know that there's nothing individually that's not connected to something else and that is not impermanent. That is, of course, what emptiness is. Things are all connected and always changing, and never can exit this Indra's net, or this one mind. So, but of course, if we make a mistake, if we really grasp that and say it doesn't matter because everything is one, of course, that is the danger in not practicing with all aspects of these precepts. So I'd like to read another thing about life and death that Dogen Zenji wrote, and I think it helps us, to understand this precept a bit better. From Shobogenzo Shoji, Shoji means life and death, or it's another word for samsara too, this realm of life and death. So he says, this present life and death is the life of Buddha. And so Buddha, I think, means this one mind, or he also called it Zenki, their total function of the entire universe in this moment, here and now. If we dislike it, he says, and try to get rid of it, this shoji, we would lose the life of Buddha. If we desire to remain in shoji, in life and death, and attach ourselves to it, we would also lose the life of Buddha. What would be retained simply is the appearance of Buddha. So if we attach to this one mind, or this life and death and samsara, or if we reject it, we kill the life of Buddha with our concepts. Only when we don't dislike life and death, and we don't desire life and death, do we enter the mind of Buddha. However, do not measure it with your mind or speak about it using words. Just cast aside and forget your body and mind and throw them into the house of Buddha. When all is done by Buddha, then all is done by Buddha. When we go on following this practice, we are released from life and death and become Buddhas without using our strength or consuming our mind. Who then continues to stagnate within mind? So he's talking about our Zazen practice there, of course, this house of the Buddha. Throw throwing oneself into the house of the Buddhas. So we don't, cling to this life and death, and we don't reject it. We don't, cling to these concepts of me and you, subject and object, and self and other. But how do we bring that beyond our Zazen practice? In our Zazen practice, we allow everything to come towards us, and we allow everything to be released from us. So there's no conceptual grasping of Buddha, sentient beings, one, two, self and other, or beyond. And so then we really are in the house of Buddha, beyond these ideas of what Buddha is, or killing or not killing. But how do we allow that to enter into our life as our practice of engaging with everything? Because we don't do Zazen in order to become better, people. We endeavor to allow Zazen to be our life, to express Zazen in everything we do, rather than doing Zazen as a part of our agenda. We want Zazen to be everything that we express in our life. That's Dogen Zenji's teaching, I think. So he goes beyond this in this last part of this reading, and he says, when we refrain from unwholesome actions, are not attached to life and death in mind, we are deeply compassionate towards all sentient beings, are respectful to seniors and kind to juniors, do not dislike or desire any of the 10,000 things. We have no expectations or worries in mind. We will be called Buddhas. And then he said there's an extremely easy way to become a Buddha. So, I don't know if that's easy or not, but he makes it clear that our vow is, nurturing the seeds of Buddha. He says in Kyoju Kaimon, when we nurture the seeds of Buddha, that is not killing. So this goes, with, of course, the 3 pure precepts, where it says we need to embrace and support all living beings. So that is part of the precept of not killing. So it's not only, refraining, but it's also supporting and offering. So I have other things. I like to read things by Dogen Zenji, but I'm not sure if I should always do it. Keep doing it. But basically, he says that in other parts, of Shobogenzo, that only a Buddha together with a Buddha can manifest this reality. And that means, for example, the Buddha awakened with all beings, that Zen saying that says Buddha looked up at the morning star and he said, I together with all beings realize the way. And that's a very deep statement on many levels. One thing, it means, of course, is that we cannot practice without the support of this entire Indra's net. This cushion that I'm sitting on was made by someone else. The material inside was grown, kapok, I don't know exactly how or where it was grown, but it used the sun and the earth and the rain, all went into giving me, support just to sit on this cushion. And of course, we can understand that this is infinite, this support that we have in every moment. Recently, I like to talk about Sujata, who offered the Buddha, the rice pudding sort of food before he attained awakening. And, I never really thought too much about Sujata, and there are different stories, about what she thought she was doing. She might have thought she was giving this to a deva who helped her have a son, but later she learned, that she had supported the Buddha and was overjoyed. Another story says that she knew this was going to help the Buddha. But in any case, we don't think about her much, and we don't think about the fact that we may not be here today speaking without Sujata, without the offering that Sujata made. And how, of course, even in that offering, as I said, the rice was supported by the entire universe to grow the rice. The milk that came from cows, those cows were nurtured by people and fed on grass and nurtured by the earth, and so on and so forth, back to the Big Bang. So in that moment of his awakening, all of the universe, all past and future, are contained. So when we, I think when we take this mind and we separate and believe in our difference from other people and from other people's practice and from other people's life, we kill this life. So Dogen Zenji is saying that this life of the Buddha is the entirety of Indra's net, including our individuality and this universal perspective. And so, when we judge other people, when we push away other people, or we judge our own selves, when we push away our pain, when we try to distract ourselves from the present moment or from this pain that may be arising, we kind of kill this life of Buddha. When we try to practice in order to get rid of delusion or get rid of our pain, we really don't know. When we start examining our pain, we don't. And when we come out of our pain, we don't really ever find some clear boundary between our pain and wisdom. For example, some years ago, I get to talk about this some time ago, but I was sitting in Zazen and this extreme amount of pain kept coming up for, I don't know, months. And I realized it was around something that I had done 40 years ago, and something I had done as a teenager, and put my parents and my sisters through a profound amount of pain. I ran away from home and wrecked my sister's car, and I went, it was this typical, not typical, but it was a typical teenage angst that I, not necessarily typical actions, but the details of that aren't so important. But I realized I never apologized to them or never really talked about it. I went through this really difficult period. And I'd been kind of holding that down, for 40 years. And, when I was in school, some years earlier, I had a clue. Like, it was in a counseling class, and one of the exercises was to talk about an event that was significant or, somehow a big part of your life. And I talked about this event, and I don't know why I picked it. Somehow, it was trying to come up. And I was laughing. I remember I was kind of giggling as I said it. And I was, and the people who were giving me feedback, they said later, it's kind of weird that you were laughing about this event. That it seems really like big and painful. And I got really defensive, and I was like, lighten up, whatever. But it was kind of a clue that I was holding that down, and it seemed like just too much. This was before I was actually doing Zazen, I think, or when I had first started doing Zazen. And so I really saw this way that, sort of killing this life by pushing it down, pushing it away. It's really difficult and causes a lot of suffering. You know, I realized there was a lot of pain, a lot of things I wasn't facing because of that event. And, you know, I went back and I did talk to my parents about it, and it was something that was resolved. You know, I can't say resolve the karma of that. I have to take responsibility for, but they were still wondering after 40 years what was going on, and sort of you know, difficult for them to talk about it. They kind of wondered if there was still some pain that that I would be caused if they talked about it. So anyway, we do this with ourselves, and we do this with other people too. You know, we make some kind of judgment about ourselves. So I think the reason I was holding this down so much, especially later, was that I felt like I was a horrible person. You know, that, I mean, how could I have done this? And when I really started looking at this kid that did this, I didn't like him much. I was like, what, why would he do this? You know, and I started investigating with care and sort of love, even, and curiosity, like the books I might have been reading at that time, the music I was listening to, the times. And I really kind of got deep into what was happening and was able to, you know, accept that and understand a bit better the mindset of this 13-year-old, and accept him somewhat better, you know. And but holding it down, holding this event down, and not accepting this person was painful and draining, keeping a lot of energy draining from me, I think, for lack of a better way of putting it. But we do this by judging ourselves, and we judge others. When in this day and age, for example, this seems to be the way of just calling people out and saying they're evil or good. And that's sort of the end of the story. Then we just fight. And there's only this kind of, you know, friction or fighting. And that's kind of, it's kind of killing the life of Buddha. I mean, not that we never disagree with people. We will always disagree with people. People have different views, of course, but whenever we get to some point where we say these group of people are evil or need to go, we really kill life, even if those people seem to be irredeemable. You know, there's some way that beyond our thinking, we have to know that we're facing Buddha, even when we seem to be facing the most egregious kinds of activity. I mean, how does a human being do that? We cannot do that without our Zazen practice, I think. You know, if we go on some concept of morality or justice or you know, equality, which are all useful and needed concepts for human beings, but of course are only a piece of, you know, they're just conceptual tools. They're not realities. So if we mistake those tools as ultimate realities, that's when we make a big mistake, you know, because our sense of justice is changing. It's always evolving according to time and the place, and thank goodness for that. If we look, you know, if we look back in human history, we see how these concepts are changing and evolving. But this one mind, this shared life, this reality is the way we're able to allow these ideas to change and evolve, and for ourselves to understand a bit more broadly the perspective of other people. But if we grasp to a concept, you know, of what is right and what is wrong, ultimately we kind of kill this life of Buddha. But that doesn't mean we don't, of course, try to do good things in the world. It's exactly the opposite. We nurture the seeds of Buddha and make an offering of this life with the wisdom of Buddha. If we try to do it with the wisdom of this limited mind, that's when we have this subject-object relationship that causes so many difficult problems. If we grasp that as reality instead of using it as a tool for the reality of our shared life, that's a big problem. So there is discernment in what we need to do in our bodhisattva work and how we engage in social activity, if that's our practice. So much of this killing life is, I think, due to our fear. Our fear of the other and others' fear of us, and we turn that fear into anger. We use that as a way to sort of not be vulnerable, But that again is really cutting off the seeds of Buddha if we grasp to that as the nature or the motivation for our way of connecting with people. So, how often do we encounter someone and not actually really listen to what they say? Look at them, receive them, and even if they're saying something that we think is profoundly wrong or we disagree with, do we really try to understand what the person is actually saying, beyond their words, maybe? Oftentimes we're just thinking about how we're going to respond or how we're going to refute their argument, especially if we're in some kind of really heated debate. But I think, again, that's a kind of killing off of the life of Buddha. So it's just a real koan for us to nurture the seeds of Buddha, to not kill life, while we still, somehow have some grounding and perspective on how to walk towards Buddha in this relative realm, in this realm of life and death, as it appears to us, as it seems it is to us. So, for me, this really has to do with Dogen Zenji, what Dogen Zenji called the three minds in, magnanimous mind. So when we encounter anything, this mind allows anything to settle there. We don't judge it, even if it's something very difficult or something we disagree with or something painful for us. We allow it. And then we encounter it as, self. Then we're allowing it to be self. And this nurturing mind is aroused, or, we enter in this nurturing mind to take care of our own life, the life of others, as if it is self. And then there's joy in that. The greatest joy, for a human being is to make this nurturing, this offering of life. That's the Bodhisattva vow. We think that we'll be edified or that we'll feel good if we get our own way, we get our own agenda. But, we understand, probably most of us here understand that strategy doesn't work. Just trying to get what we want and push away what we don't want through our power or our smartness or whatever tools we seem to have. Eventually we fail, or life does not go according to our agenda. But we can always practice, we can always practice and go deeper into this mind of Buddha here and now. So when we're having a heated debate, there's some part of us that's letting go of our judgments when they come up. this person's stupid, or I'm stupid, I'm no good. We let that go. It doesn't mean we let go of the discerning mind to see what the best response is, but letting go of the judgment of self and other, good and evil, is very fundamental, I think, to our practice. And we all do it, I think we do it, but then we return to our vow. And that's where our Zazen is really related, as an extension. Our Zazen is our life when we encounter others in this way, not as something to be manipulated, but as a part of the self. So I think will stop here. I don't think I think I've said enough, and we could say a lot, about all of these precepts. You could talk about them for days, weeks, and many things, many volumes, have been written about them. But this little piece I wanted to talk about today, and I think I've said everything I wanted to. Let me just check my notes and see if there's anything that I left out. Don't think so. Okay, and I think now we have a time for any comments that people might have.
Yes, I invite anyone here to ask any questions, any comments, any thoughts that came up during this talk.
Good morning.
Everyone's
morning.
always mute at first.
Sure. So my name is Benji. Thank you so much. You spoke about when maybe in a social interaction, when somebody is speaking with you, instead of listening and active listening, you come up with these responses to say, and that it's like killing the life of the Buddha. So I guess my question is, what really does the life of the Buddha mean?
Yeah, great question. I think the life of Buddha is just here and now, the reality of here and now, beyond our idea of Buddha. So beyond our idea of self and other, beyond our ideas of sentient beings and Buddhas, but just here, just now, allowing the life of Buddha to unfold in the present moment through our interaction, rather than trying to manipulate it into our idea of what Buddha is. And you can follow up on that if you like, if you have more questions about that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
This is Pam. I was interested in Bodhidharma's formulation of this precept and wondering if we embrace the concept that there's no extinction, does that cut against the attention and care that we need to give to our vow under this precept of paying attention to killing, either in a literal form or the life of the Buddha?
Yes, yeah, thank you very much for that question, because I think it's very important that Bodhidharma's precepts they really emphasize this kind of ultimate perspective But in the next, I think it's the next precept of not stealing, he says, I can't remember what it is right now. He says something that counteracts this perspective. I think it's something to do with if we steal, if we reify, the self, we're kind of stealing. And if we indulge in the idea of extinction, we're killing. So these precepts really, go together. But it's very important to talk about the thing that you're bringing up here, because that's the classic kind of Zen sickness when we say, well, if we don't believe that there's really any way to kill, then why does it matter? Why nurture life at all? And one way I like to talk about these things, and we can talk about it in many ways, but there's this sutta from the early canon where Buddha is talking to this person named Kaccayana, and he says, the middle way, the way of seeing Buddha or seeing reality, really, or the deepest wisdom is the way he says it, is that when we see, the arising of things, we don't get caught in this view that nothing exists. So when we see that our actions have a difference in people's lives, the way that we teach our children, the way that we encounter another person, when we see that has an effect, we don't get caught in this view that nothing matters, because we see through cause and effect that things do matter, and that's the way that we nurture others and ourselves. And yet, if we cling to that, we make another mistake. And he says the medicine for that is seeing impermanence. So when we see impermanence, that this person is always changing, that person, that cause and effect are always changing, we don't get stuck in the kind of reification of self and other, this self and object relationship that I was talking about. So that middle way of letting go is our zazen, I think. So it actually, as Dogen Zenji said, the way that we don't kill is by nurturing the seeds of Buddha. So wisdom is the wisdom of unity, and compassion is the expression of this understanding that everything I encounter is me, by doing things to nurture others and the self. So this, compassion and wisdom are never separated and never occur without the other. So, yes, it's a very, very important part to understand. If we make a big mistake, if we say there's no coming and going, so nothing matters. But actually, when we really understand that, when we really understand that our life is the life of the Buddha, so to speak, our life is the life of the universe, our life is the life of all sentient beings, that's when the compassion, arises. We don't really understand emptiness if this compassion doesn't arise. It's part of it. Then that's the nurturing mind. We all share this life, therefore, we're all in this together, and that is the nurturing mind and the joyful mind that arises. So you're welcome. We always need to see both sides. You know, we need to practice with both of these.
Anyone else have a question?
I wanted to thank you for wrapping up your your talk about how we can kind of kill parts of ourselves, or by maybe even attacking or feeling we're attacked by other people. And you kind of mentioned in social, because I had a situation last night. I'm from Canada, by the way. I'm visiting Omaha for a couple of months. And it was exactly what you said. And I was kind of hoping something would come up in our talk today. And I had to work through it. I'd found that it was killing my belief in humanity, in community, in us supporting one another as a collective. And I did end up showing my aggression towards that person. It was on social media. It was on TikTok. So it's like this video platform. And the person was in Canada. We have a big giant movement, very much like the truckers movement that everybody's aware of that happened in February. There's a new the same movement is trying to reoccur. And there's a poster boy, sort of a poster child of that, a man who represented. And so many people are busy attacking him, try to make him look like, well, he's a bad person to lead this movement, that they've lost focus of the movement itself. And I got so angry at one person who was attacking another person. I found myself very much like trying to explain to this person, why are you focusing on this one person and you're not giving a solution? Like, you don't like his solutions. So you're not giving all of us, hundreds and thousands of people that are ready to come together in a peaceful movement. You're making it unpeaceful by attacking this one person and yet not giving us sort of your solution of why you think it should be done differently. But I went to sleep quite upset about it. And then looking at like this took away my whole sense of humanity. And now we're all angry with each other and pitting each other against one another. And I find that this is happening a lot in the world right now, and all different events, like tons of different events. And I'm finding it disheartening because I'm losing my my faith in that we can collectively come together and find peace in all different situations. Now, I was talking to my husband about it after, and he'd said, try to focus on the people that aren't thinking that way, that aren't being negative, that aren't fighting against each other. But when you read all these comments, it was not one comment that was negative. Everyone was for this guy who bullied, I considered, another guy. My point wasn't whether he was correct or incorrect. My point was, maybe the guy is going down the wrong road. Maybe he is choosing a wrong direction, but we're supposed to work as a community. Why don't you come forward and say, let's work together. I've got other ideas. I got other solutions, rather than create a whole new subsection of that group and have people attacking him. This seems to be the new community. What side are you on? And what do you have to say about it? So I guess what I'm asking you is, I think a lot of people can relate to this kind of discomfort in the world right now. And what is your solution? I feel okay that I said my piece. I wasn't angry. I didn't curse. I didn't call him names. I wasn't saying there was anything wrong with him. I was like, why don't you try this other approach? He didn't see it that way. So that was fine. But what would your suggestion be for all of us that may be experiencing this or witnessing this right now in this world now?
Yeah, thank you very much for that. I think there's, so many things we could talk about, or so many lessons that you kind of pointed towards there. I don't pretend to have a solution to this kind of division that we we have today as far as a particular policy or even a behavioral approach. But I think the point is, first of all, we need to understand that our idea of what a solution is just an idea. So what happens is that I think what creates these kinds of unsurmountable divisions is that we grasp onto the idea rather than the reality, in front of us. At some point it happens, as you say, through this process of us responding to each other, we start really grasping something that's not not real, and we begin fighting over ideas, and rather than remembering the nature of our life, our shared life. So one thing, is to always know that I think we will never in this lifetime probably see what we want to see, or, and probably that's a good idea, because each one of us are limited. We have to understand the limitations of our own views, too. But what we can do is express the values that we have most deeply within us. So if the most important thing is, if we want community, how do we express that in the way that we interact with people? Now, as you said, it's very difficult because others may not be practicing this way. But it's probably unlikely in our lifetime that we will see world peace, for example, although we would all probably want that. But we can express peace within our own life, and we can express community within our own life, and endeavor to do it in the way that we interact with people. And I think it's very important to have community in our with people that do share our values, so we come together and sit and we support each other, and we practice.
So that, put another quarter in the back of the. See the rest of the show.
Our screen is frozen for just a second, Shoryu. You think?
Yeah. It's got a quarter.
Well,
Maybe someone else has something to say about this.
actually, I think we've lost him, and we forgot to do the opening chant. So,
Oh, he's back.
oh, there he's back. Let me pin it on him.
Sorry, I lost the connection there. Sorry about that.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And I was just noting that we forgot to do the opening chant for your talk, so I think we'll do the closing chant.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much for visiting with us. Really appreciate it.
A call and response. The many beings are numberless, vowing to carry them across.
The many beings are numberless, vowing to carry them across.
Greed, anger, and ignorance rise endlessly, vowing to cut off the mind road.
Greed, anger, and ignorance rise endlessly, vowing to cut off the mind road.
Dharma gates are countless, vowing to wake to them all.
Dharma gates are countless, vowing to wake Buddha's ways all embracing, vowing to follow through.
Thank you, everyone who joined online, and thank you again, Shoryu. If you're ever in our neighborhood, please drop in. And if we would put our cushions back in place, and we want to bring that out.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.